And hello everyone, welcome to another YouTube video. In this one I'll be going over my winter forecast factors that went into my winter forecast last video or a couple videos back. And it's a video I've been wanting to do and decided that I had enough time today to put together most of the factors that I've taken into consideration for my forecast. If you haven't seen that video, go check it out. It is posted and getting some good attention, so thanks for all the support with that. If you do enjoy this video as well, please consider subscribing, liking, sharing with your friends. It will help me out a lot. The goal right now is 1,000 subscribers, so I think we can get there maybe by the end of the year, probably through the beginning of next year. But if you can subscribe, that'll help my goal just that much. And yeah, so let's get started. So here's my winter forecast factors for 2025-2026. I did try to include most of the factors, if not all. Okay, there's probably maybe some stuff I'm missing off the top of my head, but this is just like the most important stuff off the top of my head, the most that bar the biggest or heaviest weight in my winter forecast. So it's most of this stuff. So we can start with the first slide, the Climate Prediction Center. I kind of teased this in the winter forecast that I did kind of get some inspo from them. So this is their actual winter forecast for December, January, and February. So overall, they have that very common La Nina look, okay? They have that northern jet dipping south and then eventually up north, and then that southern jet kind of staying further south, okay? And that's kind of reflected here on the precipitation as well, okay? So since you have your northern jet dipping through, you're going to get cooler air. Here, we can kind of match that color. We get cooler air from the north and wetter conditions into the north and Midwest, okay? Now, let's start with temperatures. We got cooler temperatures expected for much of the Pacific Northwest, as well as the north central U.S., bleeding into portions of the Midwest. Midwest, more equal chances. And then, since that the jet stream is supposed to kind of curve back up in typical La Nina, you get a little bit more warmth along the eastern seaboard, especially southern New England and south, including much of the deep south, southwest, and portions of Florida and New Mexico, Arizona, and Texas. That's what a typical La Nina brings. Also, your southern jet will play a role here in the precipitation. So with your northern jet, you have a jet, it's kind of a bad drawing, kind of like that. Therefore, you have an active storm track along that jet, okay? And with some Pacific tapping, Gulf, and once it gets to the east, that Atlantic, it can get really, really wet and active in the northern part of the track. Why not the southern part? That's because the southern part is more driven by the southern jet. That jet will be way, way down south, okay? And so you might have a drift north occasionally to bring precipitation, but since it's going to be so inactive and draped down south, you won't get as much, and therefore that's why you got your below average temperatures stretching from the entire southern coast, Gulf Coast, portions of the desert southwest, and southeast, and extreme southern portions of the mid-Atlantic. And then in the middle of both, you got your equal chances. So this is the Climate Prediction Center. Now my forecast is different from this, okay? It's more aggressive with cooler and wetter conditions further east, I would say. And that's because I feel like the Climate Prediction Center is reflecting their forecast more off of a typical La Nina. This won't be a typical moderate La Nina. This will be barely a weak La Nina in my vision. And so that reflects different forecasts, okay? There's also analogs I kind of looked into. I'll talk about that later, where I look at previous years of winter, weak La Ninas. I didn't include that in this presentation, but it does show, because analogs, I kind of have mixed feelings on them. Like, our atmosphere has changed a lot since, you could say late 1900s. And so sometimes looking at analogs kind of useless. But the one analog that I am taking into account is last year. I'll talk about that more in a bit. The next factor I kind of took into consideration was the quasi-biennial oscillation. So this is where we get into like the teleconnections, the patterns. So currently the QBO is in the easterly phase. I don't know if you guys remember, this is for the long time viewers. Several videos back, I talked about the QBO when I did my winter teasers video. I said an easterly QBO is a positive QBO. I was wrong. Okay, I did not mean to say that. An easterly QBO is negative. A positive QBO is in the westerly phase, okay? This winter is going to be different from last winter for one reason. For one of the few reasons. One is the QBO. Currently, it's in the easterly phase, right here, okay? And so, last winter was in the westerly phase. This winter is going to stay most likely through the easterly phase, okay, for most of the winter at least, is what we're expecting, and then maybe changing as we get into spring. But either way, negative QBO is very favorable for snow and cooler weather, especially in the east, and you could even argue the central U.S. and portion of the north central U.S. So this negative QBO is going to be very, very interesting this winter, since we didn't have a negative QBO last winter. Even though last winter we kind of had a weak La Nina, this winter we'll have a little bit of a less weak La Nina, I guess, and we'll have a negative QBO, which is going to play big time roles in this winter. I'm really excited to see how that plays out, because it's been a while since we've had a negative QBO and a weak La Nina in corresponding years. So, in a corresponding winter overall, in a winter overall. So that's that. Enzo, El Nino Southern Oscillation. So this is kind of this circled area right here, and clearly you have a La Nina. Okay, it's definitely pretty notable. But what else is notable is you got these warmer colors kind of bleeding. Sorry, the circle kind of covers, but you got these warmer colors trying to bleed through here, the easterlies. This is very interesting, as it could easily, it's kind of reflected on the subsurface, where we're getting rising, like easterly winds, easterly trade winds, and rising motion under this cooler water, and therefore you're getting warming. And what that warming is doing is helping to mitigate the La Nina, and eventually we're going to see this La Nina start to weaken further. Right now, it honestly looks like a moderate La Nina. Definitely not reflected off weather patterns yet, but something we're watching that will eventually weaken into cool Enzo, weak La Nina, as we get later into this winter. After Enzo, we're looking at the PDO, Pacific Decadal Oscillation. That's over here. Now, I was talking about my winter teasers video, how this kind of cool pool right here was going to be crucial to how this winter evolved, or how this warm blob, this PDO, evolved. Overall, we still have a pretty big warm blob. Okay, this negative part reflects a positive PDO. It's kind of opposite, for sure. So, positive PDO is also what we had last year. However, we're getting eroding of that by this warmth. Okay, and it's going to be a pretty interesting clash between both of these bodies. Okay, already it looks like this PDO is going to continue warm just a bit, and it'll still be a little weaker than last year, the positive PDO. So that's also kind of favorable for the eastern U.S. for cooler temperatures and stuff. And sorry I'm focused so much on the eastern U.S. I live on the eastern U.S. Most of my viewers are from the eastern U.S. Whatever I say for the eastern U.S. is the opposite for the west. So you would want a positive PDO if you want some cooler troughing and snow in the west. You'd want a positive QBO if you'd want that in the west as well. So we're watching the Pacific Decadal Oscillation. Okay, that's another factor. One after that is a TNH. This is a recently learned factor for me. It's called TNH. I was trying to find a different graph, but this is all I was really able to find. And this is more kind of talking about analogs and last year. So last year, right now, this is kind of analogs or data from all years past. This is, just pay attention, I drew an arrow all the way down here. Pay attention to 2025. This was at the beginning of 2025. Red reflects a positive TNH. This winter, we're also expecting that, okay? So you'll see probably another red line pop up closer to 2026. So we're expecting a positive positive TNH, which is also favorable for negative NAO, negative EPO time periods, and cooler and stormier conditions in the east, vice versa in the west. So it's something we're watching. It happened last year as well, so kind of expected, as TNH is more of a longer lasting pattern, and again, Mother Nature loves to repeat itself, and so this is another factor I'm watching in the winter, combined with everything else. Something else, the polar vortex. Okay, the polar vortex is really catching my eye this year. So up until about arguably mid-September, maybe just a bit before that, we were kind of running average. Okay, recently we've had this big time cool warming trend that's happened much quicker than we usually get it. Okay, we're not even into November, and our values are equivalent to those of almost late December. Okay, and so that kind of tells you how we're almost 2 months ahead right now. Now there is a trend that it's supposed to get closer to the line as we get into November with a quick little cooling. However, after that, it's expected to tank again and stay warmer than average. What that increases are the chances of sudden stratospheric warming events called SSWs, okay? What that does, so basically a polar vortex is a dome of colder air located on the North Pole and Siberia overall. When you get a sudden stratospheric warming event, that breaks down that kind of cold, solid blob of colder air into kind of chunks, and it weakens it and makes the colder air, that polar vortex, since it's so rigid when it's colder, once you get a sudden stratospheric warming event and it gets warmer in that area, warmer than average, it kind of gets wavy. It breaks up. It becomes unstable, you could say. And those waves of colder air are able to pull down closer to the lower 48. And that's why we're watching those warmer than average temperatures in the polar vortex. Okay, weaker polar vortex overall, which would lead to colder blasts and colder shots hooking up in the east and central U.S. Okay, and honestly for the whole lower 48. So that's what we're watching for as a pretty interesting factor. These are one of my favorite and most interesting factors I'm watching this winter. And then after that, just the last slide are the other crucial factors. So those are the factors I mainly looked at. Other factors, NAO and PNA, North Atlantic Oscillation and Pacific North American Pattern. Those two are also very crucial teleconnections within wintertime in the U.S. Reason I didn't include them is because they go out to around a month or so, and they don't show, or like 15 to 30, 25 days out, and so it doesn't really reflect winter. However, it's something we're going to keep watching, as all the other teleconnections I mentioned will lead to how the NAO and PNA behave in the winter. Other factors, cooler current waters off the East Coast. I think I've talked about that in my winter teasers. It's still pretty cool off the East Coast, so it's something I'm watching. If you ever were to get an inland runner or cold air damming, like snow to rain type of events in the east, maybe you get a delay. If this colder air kind of lingers and cooler sea surface temperatures along the East Coast, mainly across DC to like Boston, if you get those cooler temperatures, then whenever you get an easterly wind to warm up and break down that cold air damming, it could be even more stubborn and even harder to break down, leading to more wintry precipitation. So definitely something I'm watching if it lasts into winter. PDO as well. PDO confluence. What I mean by that is, since last year we had a positive QBO, this year positive expected too, but barely. It's expected to weaken, break down. How much it weakens and breakdowns is a very important key for this winter as well. Some other stuff I recently learned: Ural Ridge, Aleutian Ridge, and troughing in those areas. If you get a big time Ural Ridge, it's game on. Okay, what that does, the Ural Ridge basically kind of is a ridge over the Urals in Asia, in Europe, and that's where, kind of northern Asia, I'm pretty sure, and that's where you get a negative NAO kind of getting forced, and negative EPO, cooler and snowier times, overall even snowier in the eastern U.S. Vice versa if it's troughing. And the Aleutian Ridge, the kind of ridge that spikes up in Alaska, that's also going to be crucial for those more sustained cold blasts into the eastern U.S. Something else I was going to talk about. So ENSO, what I learned recently as well, lots of stuff I learned. See, like when I make my winter forecast, you guys learn my thoughts, and I also learn based off my own research. I also learned, so obviously ENSO has kind of like 3 to 4 main areas, and Nino 1+2 or 1.2, Nino 3.4, Nino 4. Those are the main 3 I look at. Nino 4, I learned if Nino 4 gets convection and it overall has warmer, you could say, temperatures or rising motion, that could also lead to cyclogenesis off the eastern seaboard, and that's something to watch as well, because there's signs of that showing up in the deep water analysis of the Nino of ENSO. So it's gonna be very interesting. ENSO's gonna really be very interesting. I was trying to include those graphs on here, but it's kind of giving me a hard time. So it's something to watch. But yeah. Third bullet point, Mother Nature loves to repeat herself. I think I said that earlier. Similar positive TNH and consistent NAO, negative EPO shots like last year may be in play. Question is, will it be suppression depression for snow lovers like me, or a feast? What I mean by that is, last year, the negative NAO and negative EPO was beautiful for cold air for the eastern U.S. But what that did is it suppressed the northern stream so far south into the southeast that southeastern Virginia, northeastern North Carolina, DC, south of DC, that area capitalized greatly. I mean, there was that one winter storm that brought up to 1 foot of snow in those areas. That's where this is going to be a question. Does that happen again? Or does this time the Southeast Ridge, since it will be La Nina, will it flex a little more? Will it help to keep that track a little more north? Or will it be almost a repeat like last year? Something to definitely figure out. Okay? And this year, kind of similar to last year, I'd say Miller B's are mainly the type of storm. I did say nor'easter is also possible. I think what I mean by that is I definitely think nor'easters have a higher chance than last year. But again, it depends on that Nino 4. Depends on these, if we get these perfect lows to form off and we get some good NAO, negative NAO, and the Ural Ridge, if it builds, that's when we could really see Miller A's and nor'easters. But Miller B's will definitely be one of the keys, whether it's an inland cutter, whether it's a cash-in for the snow lovers in the Mid-Atlantic. And then for the western U.S., Clippers are going to return back for the east. The west also will have some tracks, except, again, pretty dry, except for Pacific Northwest, where we obviously have that Pacific Jet. And we could also have some cutter systems for the Midwest. Let me know if I should make a winter track or winter storm track forecast for the U.S. I'll maybe make one, because that also I did for last year. It was pretty fun. So, last bullet point, these factors come more important as winters kick off, especially towards the beginning of December, which is when my new reevaluated winter forecast should be posted. So, my new forecast, I had a winter forecast kind of late October. This winter forecast reflects for late October to early November period. And then I have probably my final one in the beginning of December, which will be everything pack loaded, probably a really long video, might be a premiere. And so I'll let you guys know with that. So, I hope you guys enjoyed. That's all I had for today. We'll be back with the regular videos. Still contemplating if I'll be able to post tomorrow. I'll let you guys know. But for now, have a great rest of your day, and I'll see you guys in the next one.